The Buffalo News is coming up next.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Tuesday, April the 28th. Your readers today are Lori and
Lita.
And I have some weather words for you today. No doubt there's no drought because once again, I see, looking at the 7-day forecast starting with today, rain, cooler with rain, breezy and sunny. Then the next day, a couple of showers. Then a PM shower, and then rain and drizzle, and then Monday, cloudy with a little rain. So, again, no doubt there's no drought. Today, showers are around in the morning. Otherwise, it's just mostly cloudy, breezy, and not as warm today. The high will be 65. A thunderstorm in spots tonight with a low of 50. Cooler tomorrow with periods of rain, and there can be ponding on the roadways. So make sure that you're safe driving with a high of 54. If you want to be warmer, go to Dryden, Texas, 95. If you're having a hot flash, you need to be cooler. Malta, Montana, 12 degrees. The sun sets tonight at 8:13 p.m. And some trivia. During what time of day do most lightning fatalities occur? 70% occur in the afternoon. Who knew?
Wow.
On to you, Lita.
Good to know. A plan to unify Western New York Catholic schools under central system is moving forward with a September goal in mind. The plan was first announced in January of 2025, but its implementation was put on hold for about a year to allow new Superintendent of Catholic Schools, Jolene Dimitrov, time to meet with school representatives and make some changes to the plans based on feedback. The Education Department now aims to have the centralized system in place by September. Dimitrov, a former public school teacher and administrator, was principal of Cardinal O'Hara High School in the town of Tonawanda prior to starting as superintendent on the 1st of June. The diocese eliminated more than $4 million in funding for Catholic elementary schools after filing for Chapter 11 in 2020, but Bishop Michael Fisher has repeatedly said that he aims to ensure the long-term stability of Catholic education in the region through a reorganization process. Dimitrov is overseeing an effort to reinvigorate area Catholic schools through a centralized system that will handle the administrative task of operating schools, including finances, human resources, grant writing, and data management, and will allow the school's sites to focus on teaching and learning. Catholic schools in the past largely operated on their own as a ministry of the parishes where they were located, and often in competition with each other for a dwindling pool of students and teachers. Other hires in the Education Department include an assistant superintendent for government services, a finance manager, an assistant superintendent for academics and data, and a human resource manager. A key piece of the strategic plan is getting approval from the State Board of Regents for the 29 separate schools to merge into the Department of Education, which has had a state charter since 1970. To that end, the pastors of parishes with elementary schools have been asked to transfer all school educational programs and associated operations, contracts, assets, and liabilities to the Department of Education. Legal transfer agreement forms were distributed to those pastors earlier this month. The language in the agreements has raised concerns, especially among some of the area's most successful Catholic schools, about the diocese's ability to manage a school system while still working through a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Some skeptics of the plan for a centralized system said donations that help make those schools successful would dry up if the gifts were to be used system-wide. Dimitrov said schools with strong enrollments may be viable now, but that was once the case for many schools no longer operating. She noted that 80,000 students were enrolled in nearly 200 schools in the 70s, and the current numbers are 6,500 students in 29 schools. The strategic plan seeks to change that trajectory, she said. She acknowledged that the bankruptcy has led to uncertainty and a sense of mistrust among many parishioners, which has made it difficult to try to build confidence in a plan for the schools. We're re-engineering our institution to avoid collapse and to strengthen our schools. We feel that we're stronger together, she said. Is there ever an opportune time to do this? No. Something needs to change to be able to ensure that any child, any family that wants their child to have a Catholic education here in Western New York has access to do it. A system approach will allow all schools to take advantage of economies of scale, said Michael Bauman, Human Resource Manager for the Diocese Education Department. Instead of a small school trying to create a benefit package for 30 people, we'll have a system that can create compensation and benefit packages for 600 people, said Bauman, former superintendent of the school for the New Faith School District. Bauman acknowledged that Catholic schools won't ever be able to match the pay and benefits of public schools, but a system approach will allow for improvements in pay and in professional development for teachers. We'd like to be able to provide some incentive for our teachers to stay with us and not have to look elsewhere because they can't afford to work for us anymore. The Diocese Education Department isn't looking to cash in on parish money through the transfer agreements, even though in most parish schools, the school finances are not separated from the parish finance, Bauman said. When we talk about transferring assets, we're talking about materials, supplies, equipment that are associated with the education division. We're just talking about desks and chairs and computers and books and pens and things like that, he said. We're not talking about absorbing funds from a parish. The transfer agreement will enable the Diocese Education Department to absorb the educational operation of a parish. Parishes also will still own their school buildings, which will be leased for $1 to the Education Department. Any account designated for a specific school will still be restricted for use at that school, Dimitrov said. And ultimately, with state approvals, the Department of Education will be separately incorporated entity that runs Catholic schools in Western New York, not the diocese. Another significant aspect of the plan includes accreditation for the school system from the Middle States Association, which Dimitrov and Bauman said will be instrumental in attracting families to Catholic schools. A team of evaluators will be in Western New York this week to examine the schools as part of the accrediting process, and we're very excited about having some closure on that and being able to promote that as part of our robust academic standards that we have.
And the Sabres are in position to set off a wave of big celebrations. We've had a lot of sad moments and hockey seasons in our midst over the years, whether they've come at the Odd or KeyBank Center. The goal for Tuesday night downtown is simple. Whether you're inside or outside the rink, happy handshakes. You know what I'm talking about. It's one of the great traditions in sports that every series in the Stanley Cup playoff ends at center ice with the teams putting out their hands and saluting each other. The Sabres can provide us with that scene if they beat the Boston Bruins in Game 5 of their first round series. Buffalo leads it 3-1 after grabbing control by winning both games in Boston's TD Garden. The one problem is we're not used to seeing the scene as part of a Buffalo celebration. The Sabres haven't won a series anywhere since beating the New York Rangers in the second round in 2007, a set best remembered for the Game 5 comeback featuring the late tying goal by Chris Drury and the overtime winner from Maxim Afinogenov. It is the longest current dry spell in the NHL. That drought, there's that word again, turns 19 years old on May 6th. As for winning at home, the Sabres have wrapped up a series just twice here since calendars flipped over the year 2000. Those having come in 2001 versus Philadelphia and in 2007 against the Ted Noland New York Islanders. The Sabres have exited the playoffs 29 times in their history, and 14 of the deciding games were in Buffalo. In a bizarre bit of franchise history, 6 of the seasons have hit a brick wall finish as the home fans had to endure the visitors scoring an overtime goal to put a dagger into the Sabres' hearts and send them off for the summer. You may not remember Pittsburgh's George Ferguson scoring just 47 seconds into OT to end the old best-of-3 preliminary round at the Odd back in 1979. But I'm betting plenty of you still curse and shake your heads over Daniel Alfredsson's 2007 East Final Game 5 versus Ottawa, Darius Kasparidis, 2001 second round Game 7 versus Pittsburgh, or that Hull guy in 1999. If you need that one explained, I can't help. This season has erased a lot of negative history, and winning a series at home can be another nugget. The Sabres have found their game and completely taken the Bruins out of theirs. This feels like a wagon that is just going to speed on to the next round against Tampa Bay or Montreal. Buffalo scored 9 straight goals over Game 3 and 4, a streak snapped by Sean Curley's garbage time goal in the final minute of Sunday's 6-1 win. The Bruins managed goals at home from only Corrali and fellow bottom sixer Tanner Jeannot. Marquee men David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy both required F-bombs to convey their disgust to Boston reporters after Sunday's fiasco, but they've been milk carton men themselves. The Bruins' top guys have gone exit stage left since the missed penalty shot by Victor Arvidsson against Alex Lyon in Game 3 seemingly turned the series when it prevented Boston from taking a 2-0 lead in that game. Still, Sabres coach Lindy Ruff has the right perspective. His team hasn't won anything yet. You can expect this to be the hardest game that we're going to have to play short term here, Ruff warned Monday in a session with reporters downtown, because the Bruins are in the nothing to lose and everything to gain category. They know if they don't put whatever they can put into the game, they're done. We're going to see more risk. We may even see their defense involved a lot more. While Ruff has a point, the Bruins appear to have veered completely off path, joining the journey down disarray drive that has turned the non-Celtics division of Boston sports into utter chaos. Just off yet another trip to the Super Bowl, the Patriots draft over the weekend was completely overshadowed by the Mike Vrabel, Diana Rossini scandal that has been the talk of sports media world all month. The Red Sox staged Black Saturday, firing longtime manager Alex Cora and a bunch of his coaches late into the night while the team was in Baltimore, and then having execs fly in Sunday to tell the players not to ask questions and just stick to baseball. Based on the quotes I read out of that clubhouse, it's pretty clear how that edict played. And the Bruins, a bit of a black sheep in town with just one Stanley Cup back in 2011. Since Bobby Orr was the golden boy of the 1970s, they are on the verge of frittering away a nice bounce-back season after a terrible clunker at home came at the worst possible time. Now the Bees have injury concerns heading into Game 5 too. The reliable Arvidsson, who has to still be kicking himself for that penalty shot, took a hit from Matthias Samuelsson on Sunday, and he's questionable. And Boston coach Marco Sturm said Monday the same status applies to defenseman Nikita Zadorov, who also sat out practice in suburban Brighton. No idea what happened to the former Sabre, although I suppose Zadorov could be suffering from painful brain lock after his classless cross-check to the arm of Rasmus Dahlin in the third period on Sunday. Zadorov's wallet is $5,000 lighter thanks to the NHL's Department of Player Safety. He's darn lucky he wasn't suspended for his post-whistle foolishness of snapping his stick on Dalin's arm for no apparent reason other than he was mad about his team getting punked on a home ice. As we left the Garden Sunday night, the Celtics' iconic parquet floor was getting put back down in advance of Tuesday's potential Game 5 clincher against the Philadelphia 76ers. The ice in Boston might not make another appearance until September. As for the ice at KeyBank Center, everyone in Buffalo is hoping the Sabres are shaking on it sometime late Tuesday night.
Go Sabres!
Sabres.
And you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service, and the time is 14 minutes past the hour. And the First Lady rips ABC, calls late night's Kimmel a coward. First Lady Melania Trump excoriated ABC and Jimmy Kimmel, describing the late-night comedian as a coward whose words are corrosive and deepens the political sickness within America. The First Lady called on ABC to take action against Kimmel in a Monday morning post on X. On his show late last week, Kimmel mocked President Trump and the First Lady in a parody of the White House Correspondents' Association dinner. The jokes came 2 days before Saturday's event was abruptly canceled after a gunman breached security at Washington's Hilton Hotel before being tackled by the heavy security. The suspect was apprehended before reaching the ballroom where the president and the first lady were seated on stage. Kimmel has not addressed the events late Saturday. This year's dinner marked the first time Donald and Melania Trump had attended the event, which has long celebrated First Amendment freedoms and the Washington press corps. After returning to the White House, Trump, during a news conference, briefly called for unity amid the country's political divisions. On Thursday night's broadcast, Kimmel fashioned a monologue that he said would serve as an alternative version of the Washington-based Correspondents' Dinner. Our president is the delicate snowflake with the thinnest fat skin of any human being ever, and that means there's going to be no comedian this year, said Kimmel, who was the headlining act of the dinner years ago. So I thought, why not take a page from the Kid Rock alternative halftime show and do some of the jokes a comedian might do if our president wasn't a trembling drama queen who's scared of comedy. He went on to describe how the First Lady had the glow of an expectant widow, an apparent reference to Trump's age and health. People like Kimmel shouldn't have the opportunity to enter our homes each evening to spread hate, Melania Trump wrote. Enough is enough. It is time for ABC to take a stand, the First Lady wrote. How many times will ABC's leadership enable Kimmel's atrocious behavior at the expense of our community? The flap could become one of the first major challenges for Disney chief executive Josh D'Amaro, who succeeded Bob Iger last month. Disney is the parent company of ABC. Representatives of ABC and Disney were not immediately available for comment. The controversy comes after ABC briefly benched Kimmel over remarks he made in the wake of last September's shooting death of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Hours before the suspension, FCC head Brendan Carr warned that local broadcasters who aired Kimmel could face fines or loss of licenses and said it's time for them to step up. His comments garnered pushback from the entertainment industry and politicians on both sides of the aisle, including Senator Ted Cruz from Texas, who likened Carr's threats to that of an organized crime boss. In September, Sinclair and Nexstar Media Group briefly took Kimmel's show off the air on their 70 ABC-affiliated stations, covering nearly a quarter of U.S. households. There have also been considerable tensions over Kimmel's frequent barbs about both President Trump and the First Lady's past friendship with convicted child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, who died in 2019. In his monologue on Thursday, Kimmel referenced those ties. I do want to praise the POTUS. Look how far you've come. 30 years ago, you're just some rich guy on Jeffrey Epstein's private jet out of Teterboro, Kimmel said, but you worked hard. You stayed friends. You shared some wonderful secrets. And because of that, you're able to fly on the planes 7 more times. Dreams really do come true.
And Charles is set to meet Trump for the toughest mission of his reign. Washington. The word special does not begin to do it justice, said Donald Trump of the relationship between the United States and Britain. We're like 2 notes in one chord, or 2 verses of the same poem, each beautiful on its own, but really meant to be played together. That was in September, when the president spoke at a banquet hosted by King Charles III to mark his unprecedented second state visit to Britain. Since then, Trump's comments about Britain have not been so lyrical or so kind. The president has called Prime Minister Keir Starmer a loser over his refusal to assist the U.S. in its war with Iran. He said Starmer was no Churchill, comparing him instead to Neville Chamberlain, a previous British leader who appeased Hitler. He declared that Britain was no longer the Rolls-Royce of allies and dismissed its Royal Navy aircraft carriers as toys. Asked this month about the state of the special relationship, Trump replied, not good at all. It falls to King Charles to help mend it. The monarch landed in the U.S. on Monday for a 4-day state visit to mark the 250th anniversary of its independence. The special relationship has endured a lot since then, from Britain's burning down the White House in the War of 1812 to the U.S. invasion of Grenada in 1983 when Queen Elizabeth II was its head of state. Relations are again at a low ebb. Although the British monarch must stay above politics, His government is hoping that his U.S. tour can help ease tensions. Charles and Queen Camilla will have plenty of FaceTime with the Trumps on the Washington leg of the trip, which culminates in an address by the king to a joint meeting of Congress before the royals head to New York and to Virginia. The king will not be having the kind of conversation with the president or with senior senators and so on that the prime minister would, but he's extremely well informed, and it provides an opportunity for private conversations on some really important issues, said Peter Westmacott, former British ambassador to the United States. From the United Kingdom's point of view, we would obviously hope that those private conversations will have some impact, he added. It's a tough test. Charles has become something of a trump card for the British government. When Starmer visited the White House last year, he wasted little time in brandishing a letter from the king, inviting the president for a state visit at Windsor. The move showed how Starmer's government planned to handle Trump in his second term, play to his penchant for flattery and royalty, and hope to reap those rewards. Trump's affection for Britain and its monarchy is known to run deep. In The Art of the Deal, Trump said he got his sense of showmanship from Queen Elizabeth II, whose coronation he watched on TV when he was a little boy. He recalled being enthralled by the pomp and circumstances, the whole idea of royalty and glamour. And the president often speaks of his great love for Scotland, the birthplace of his mother, where he owns 2 golf courses. But beneath this affection, there are deep differences. Trump's drill baby drill plan is the sort of policy that Charles, an early environmentalist, has rallied against for decades. While the king is a devotee of wind farms, Trump abhors them. He complained last year that the wind farms off the coast of his Taberny golf course were not only an eyesore, but driving the whales loco. When Trump met then-President Charles during his first term, he complained the conversation had been terrible, according to former White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grissom. Trump said the future king spoke nothing but climate change. Grissom wrote in her memoir, Charles is fully cognizant of the turbulent landscape he'll need to navigate while deploying the diplomatic expertise he has honed for decades. For the king, this trip isn't just about Trump. It's about America and the shared history between the two countries. That relationship transcends the presidency, a UK source with knowledge of the state visit arrangements told CNN. They pointed to shared values, shared cultures with ingrained economies and security arrangements. All of those things predate this current moment, and all of them will continue long after, the source added. That's because when Trump leaves office and is replaced, the king will need to pick up with the next president and the ones after that until his son William takes over. The reality, CNN was told by the source, is that the two countries have disagreed in the past on everything, from Vietnam to the Suez Crisis, but ultimately came back together during the World Wars, the Cold War, and the creation of the United Nations. They don't always have to be rosy, the source explained. Sources from the British side have said the king's schedule has been tailored more broadly for the American people. In Washington, the White House will lead on anything that happens at executive residence, such as private meeting between the king and Trump, a ceremonial military review with 21-gun salute, and the state dinner. Beyond the White House, the Brits have shaped arrangements and optics. The King and Queen will attend a garden party reflecting a cross-section of U.S. society, and later in the week they will lay a wreath and flowers commemorating those who have lost their lives in service to the U.S., to the U.K., and its allies. The highlight of the visit is the King's address to a joint meeting of Congress, only the second time a British monarch has done so. He is expected to speak directly to the American people rather than deliver an ode to any particular president. There have been calls for the royal couple to meet with survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse following the Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor scandal. Charles's brother was arrested in February on suspicion of misconduct in public office. Police had previously said they were reviewing claims that Mountbatten-Windsor shared sensitive information with a convicted sex offender while serving as an envoy. The former prince has previously denied all accusations against him and insisted he never witnessed or suspected any of the behavior of which the late Epstein is accused. While the royals won't address the Epstein scandal directly during the visit, they are expected to show how survivors of abuse should always be front of mind by meeting representatives of charities that work with survivors of domestic violence. Away from the Capitol, the royal couple will continue this theme of connection with everyday Americans in New York, where they will visit the 9/11 Memorial and meet first responders, as well as going to a community initiative in Harlem, a literacy event, with a possible walkabout. Then in Virginia, they will meet indigenous communities to hear about conservation, but also the contentious issue of land rights, which may raise eyebrows in the Trump administration. They will also attend a 250th anniversary block party. As Trump indulges his love for all things royal, Charles will spotlight the shared history between the two countries and perhaps, in the process, ease current tensions. When asked whether Charles and Camilla's visit could help fix the faltering U.S.-UK relationship, Trump struck a positive tone on Thursday. Absolutely. The answer is yes, he told the BBC in a phone interview.
And moving over to the Buffalo editorial, a positive trend. Violent crime and shootings in Buffalo are at historic lows, and that was one of the topics discussed by Governor Kathy Hochul during a recent news conference here. Crime has hardly been wiped out, but Buffalo and other cities throughout the country have experienced noteworthy drops. There are outbursts that seem to contradict this narrative. Saturday's thwarted attempt of a gunman to attack attendees at the White House Correspondents' Dinner in Washington is a grim reminder that, compared with other Western countries, the U.S. is a violent place. However, the statistics tell a better story. Nationally, in 2025, registered possibly the lowest homicide rate in 125 years, and the largest single-year drop on record as reported by the New York Times. News Albany Bureau Chief Robert Gavin reported on the governor's press conference and the message Hochul, a Democrat, is sending as she seeks re-election in November. Hochul was joined by top local officials at the office of Erie County District Attorney Michael Keene as she touted state budget investments in law enforcement and collaboration among agencies as reasons why violent crime is at a 10-year low and shooting at a 20-year low in the city. Keene said that from 2021 to 2025, shootings in Buffalo dropped 67%, and that homicides by gun violence plummeted 66%. Keene said the 39 homicides recorded in Erie County last year marked the lowest tally according to records dated in 1984. The county has 7 homicides in 2026. There have been 13 at this time last year. Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz and Buffalo Mayor Sean Ryan also noted violent crime's downward trend. Of course, no official is claiming crime can be eliminated entirely, but these numbers are encouraging, especially given the situation a few years ago. The governor said that when she first came into office in 2021, crime was out of control. It was surging all over the state of New York, and places like Buffalo were under siege. She had a point. Back in June of 2021, the news ran a story about a surge of gun violence in Buffalo that at the time left 134 people either wounded or dead this year through May 2022. It was an 81% increase compared with the same time period of the previous year. In late 2021, the New York Times reported that the United States experienced its biggest one-year increase on record in homicides in 2020, with some cities hitting record highs. The higher murder rate, the article noted, continued into 2021, although the pace slowed as the year progressed. Now, according to Hochul, that surge is officially over. The governor credited initiatives, including the one across 28 communities that belong to the state's Gun-Involved Violence Elimination, or GIVE, initiative. The effort includes Buffalo, Cheektowaga, Lackawanna, Amherst, Niagara Falls, and Jamestown. She said shootings with injuries are down 84% since 2021 and down 57% since last year. Hochul said over the last 4 years, the state invested $3 billion into public safety and increased aid to district attorneys from $41 million in 2022 to $183 million. Hochul is focused on decline in violent crime as her Republican opponent, Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman, highlighted his county's status as the safest in America. Blakeman claimed in a post on X that crime had increased 25% under Hochul. He's wrong. Despite the shock of an incident like Saturday's in Washington, violent crime in New York and throughout the county has trended downward. Rather than turning that progress into a political talking point, leaders in both parties should focus on sustaining it.
And you're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 28 minutes after the hour. And in my view, missing mom and her kitchen skills is stated by James Morabito, and he has vivid memories of his mother's wonderful food. I really miss my mom's cooking. Most of us grow up, leave home, get married, or otherwise lose touch with the dishes that our mothers used to make for our families. They may not have been gourmet chefs, but they knew their way around food. Now I realize in saying this that one could say the same thing about many fathers also. Whether it was dad or mom, you still miss those foods. My mom had a lot of kids. She had to balance our tastes, affordability and availability of some foods, and what she felt like cooking that day. When I was young decades ago, availability meant in season. There were far fewer frozen or convenient food choices. Some of my mom's recipes appeared in magazines. She was also a member of community clubs which published cookbooks with recipes submitted by their members. Our mom made very satisfying meatloafs and salmon loaves. As a Southerner, she always pronounced the silent L in salmon, salmon. We kids did too. Despite her non-Italian background, she also made some great spaghetti and homemade meatballs. My dad had many friends, and every summer one of them would let my family have a big garden on their land. We grew, you guessed it, lots of tomatoes and peppers, along with more eggplants, corn, squash, and other crops. It was fun for us little kids to hang around working, or should I say playing, in those gardens. My parents would make homemade spaghetti sauce and store it in a commercial frozen food locker, a popular thing back then. Another of Mom's specialties was delicious chocolate fudge, which was a big home cooking favorite in the 1950s and 60s. It was made with that white marshmallow cream stuff that comes, in a jar, and sometimes she'd add walnuts. It was an amazing treat for us little kids at that time. Even today, I wouldn't mind having about 100 pounds of it. I could live on it. One of my mother's most interesting culinary achievements was revealed every Thanksgiving and Christmas. We would host many relatives at our house, along with some friends. When the turkey was served, we little kids would give ourselves knowing glances because we could pretty much predict what was about to happen. As people would start eating the stuffing, someone always inevitably say, "Hey, there's pepperoni in this stuffing. It's good. I like it." My siblings and I would chuckle. That was not flattery. It was really good. Many years later, as an adult, I asked Mom where she got the idea for that. She said, "Well, everyone seems to like pepperoni on pizza and scrambled eggs, so one day I thought, why not put some in the turkey stuffing?"
That's cool.
Also, at Christmas time, she would make a wonderful holiday fruit cakes featuring dried and candied fruits. She would make several of them and give them to relatives and friends who always had good things to say about them. My mom was a smart, complicated woman with a bunch of jobs and entrepreneurial pursuits, but she also excelled at the traditional motherly and wifely skills, including cooking delicious food for her brood, extended family, and friends. So yes, I really miss my mother's cooking, and as you may have guessed, I really miss her. Me too.
Me too. I will tell you, just a little aside, my mother used to save the bacon grease and then slather it on bread and put cinnamon and sugar on top of it, put it in the broiler.
Oh my.
And that was our dessert. Oh, it was awesome. Just awesome. But anyway, I digress. The editorial cartoon is really cute. It's a drawing of Lion, our goalie, in goal. And then in the middle is saber-toothed tiger with his hands up in the air proclaiming a victory. And then the Boston Bruin fans with their heads in their hands. And the caption is, "Lion, Tiger, Bears, oh my." And Sabres win 6-1 in the big game. And we're hoping for a big one today. Okay, in another voice in healthcare, submitted by Dr. Sarah Ventry, who is a division chief of general pediatrics at UBMD, says, as a pediatrician and medical director of 2 Golisano Children's Hospitals of Buffalo's pediatric clinics, Niagara Street and Broadway Pediatrics, I am reminded every day that a child's health is shaped by far more than what happens during a routine checkup. Families come to us looking for guidance on their child's development, behavior, parenting challenges, and everyday needs. But a physician cannot do this alone. It takes a team of individuals, each playing an important role in supporting families. We have grown our clinical team through a partnership with the Independent Health Foundation Growing Up Strong program, which integrates Healthy Steps specialists into our pediatric care. With degrees in social work, psychology, or early childhood education, these specialists understand the complexities of childhood development and behavioral health. With Healthy Steps, we routinely conduct developmental screening for children under 5, allowing concerns to be identified early. Specialists also help families navigate sleep routines, feeding, maternal mental health, and early behavioral concerns. In one case, a routine screening revealed early signs of autism, and with the support of Healthy Steps specialists, we were able to guide the family through evaluation, diagnosis, and placement in a therapeutic preschool. This kind of support is increasingly urgent in our community. According to a recent report, 42% of Erie County households live below the ALICE, or Assessed Limited Income Constrained Employment Threshold, meaning they are employed but unable to afford basic necessities like food, childcare, and health care. Clinics alone cannot solve these challenges, but they serve as critical access points for families who need help the most. Community partnerships play an important role, collaborating with local food pantries and organizations like Every Bottom Covered, which provides diapers and hygiene essentials to underserved families across Western New York, helps ensure children's basic needs are met. Health does not begin and end in the exam room. When we invest in this work and collaborate with trusted community members or partners, we strengthen our ability to support children and families across Western New York.
And Noah Feldman says docket and doctrine will lessen the legacy of Chief Justice Roberts. Chief Justice John Roberts was the driving force behind the rise of the Supreme Court's emergency docket as a powerful tool to empower the activist conservative majority. That's the main takeaway of the cache of memos leaked to the New York Times. Roberts' immediate motivation was to enforce the major questions doctrine, another tool of conservative activism that he has made his signature contribution to the court's jurisprudence. In retrospect, the convergence between the emergency docket and the major questions doctrine was no coincidence. Taken together, the docket and the doctrine will define the legacy of the Roberts Court. It was already public knowledge that the 2016 environmental case of West Virginia versus EPA marked the first time the Supreme Court used its emergency powers in a new way that has since become standard. To simplify, the court broke precedents by issuing an order blocking the Obama administration's Clean Power Plan. The court did so even though a challenge to the legality of the Environmental Protection Agency's plan hadn't yet been addressed by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, and even though the appellate court had turned down the petitioner's request to block the regulation in the meantime. What makes the leaked memos newsworthy is that when the Supreme Court issued its order in the emergency docket in 2016, it didn't give an explanation. In the memos, you can see Roberts giving his explanation, the support he received from Justice Samuel Alito, the pushback from the liberal justices, and the basis for the decisive vote cast by Justice Anthony Kennedy. In his memo to the other justices recommending the new use of the emergency docket, Robert did not acknowledge that anything fundamentally new would be happening if the court granted the request to stop the Clean Power Plan. He just recited the ordinary test the court uses to determine whether a stay is justified, which includes a reasonable probability that 4 justices would vote to hear the case, a fair prospect that a majority of the court would then reverse the decision below, and a likelihood of irreparable harm to the applying party. Applying those factors, the Chief Justice prefigured privately the major questions doctrine that he would deploy publicly when the justices decided the case 6 years later. According to that doctrine, the justices can and should block the executive branch when its when it proposes a new or novel interpretation of an old statute to make significant change in its regulatory authority without clear congressional authority. Then, equally important, the Chief Justice insisted that the industry actors who were seeking the stay would experience irreparable harm if they had to wait for the D.C. Circuit to rule. His rationale was that the industry would have to start preparing for new performance standards right away, even though the legal rules would not go into effect until at least 2022. Given the long lead times and high capital expenditures required for the construction of new plants, he wrote, once a utility takes steps to comply with the rule, its actions are not likely to be undone. Justice Stephen Breyer wrote back to the chief proposing a modest compromise to deny the stays but reassure the industry that power companies were entitled to extensions under that regulation. After Roberts disagreed, Justice Elena Kagan wrote a frank and clear memo explaining that it would be unprecedented to block the regulation given that the D.C. Circuit had already refused the stay and was considering the case. While she was at it, Kagan objected to Roberts' major questions line of argument and rejected the idea of an irreparable harm to the industry actors. Ultimately, the decision came down to Kennedy, as many did at that time. In a two-sentence memorandum, Kennedy said simply that he expected that the Supreme Court would grant the stay anyway 4 to 6 months later when the D.C. Circuit would have ruled. Fairness to the parties counseled that we should grant it now, he wrote. It seems probable that in 2016, Roberts did not fully anticipate just how important or how controversial the emergency docket would soon become. Rather, he was concerned about the core issue that lay behind his major questions doctrine. His fear that the executive branch could use the tools of statutory interpretation to bring about major policy changes, as the Obama administration had done with the Clean Power Plan. Since then, the doctrine, now called MQD by court watchers, has become Roberts' most powerful tool. It's also the court's most effective activist doctrinal tool to block executive action. Mostly, that activism has been conservative. In addition to using MQD in 2022 to overturn the Clean Power Plan, the court relied on it the same year to block the COVID-era vaccine or test mandate issued by OSHA. Then, in 2023, the court's conservative majority used it to block the Biden administration's student loan forgiveness program. More recently, Roberts wrote the opinion for the court using MQD to block President Trump's tariffs. This was an important showing that the doctrine could be used against Republican presidents and not only against Democratic ones. But it's noteworthy that the court didn't use the emergency docket to stay the tariffs before hearing that case, apparently considering hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs not to count as irreparable injury for those who paid them. History will see the emergency docket and MQD as twin drivers of the Roberts Court's conservative activism. That's a surprising legacy for a Chief Justice who came to the court as an advocate for judicial restraint and has long positioned himself as a judicial moderate committed to neutrally calling balls and strikes.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need any further information on any of these names, you can call us at 716-821-5555. Lydia Mary Fish, Joseph F. Hobolt, Salvador J. Leo, known as Sam, James A. Ross, and Marvin Allen Smith. Again, if you have any questions, you can call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555.
Well, it's time for the Royal Stars. Happy birthday for Tuesday, April 28th. You are goal-oriented and resourceful. You have physical and mental vigor and organizational talents. This is a year of service for you, probably service to family. If you're Aries, today is an example of that song, if you can't be with the one you love, honey, then love the one you're with. So tonight, just cooperate. Wow, okay. If you're Taurus, work-related romance and flirtations will make this an interesting day for you. But tonight, you gotta work. Sorry.
Well, you know.
Gemini, today is full of romantic possibility, fun flirtations, and warm friendships. Venus is in your sign, and the moon is in the most playful part of your chart. Tonight, you get to socialize. Cancer, family relations will be warm and friendly today. You might see how to get the funding or practical support you need to make improvements at home. Tonight, just relax at home. Leos, it's easy to feel warm-hearted and affectionate to others today, which will lead to romantic connections for many.
Ooh.
Life is too short for perfection. But tonight, you're supposed to have discussions. It just doesn't seem to follow.
No.
Virgos, although this is a warm, friendly day and romantic, your focus is also on money, earnings, and exciting purchases. Tonight, check your money. Libras, this is a fabulous day. The moon is in your sign, dancing with both Pluto and Venus, promoting the possibility of meeting someone unusual who is totally appealing.
Ooh.
Tonight, you win.
Ooh.
Scorpios, although this is a friendly and romantic day, this is also an excellent day in terms of finances, gifts, and favors coming your way. Be open to offers of others. Tonight, though, enjoy your privacy. Sagittarius, this is a wonderful day to schmooze with others. Your relations will be warm and friendly. You might want to make plans for the future because tonight you're going to focus on friendships. Capricorn, you're high viz today, which means you are likely admired by others, especially at work. Perhaps this is why a work-related romance might begin. Ooh, tonight you will be admired. Aquarius, grab every chance to travel or do something different. You're hungry for adventure today. I have to laugh. I'm leaving tomorrow for Scotland and I'm an Aquarius, so that's just funny. This is a great day for romance.
So you're not going to be here next week?
No, I will be.
Oh, okay.
This is a great day for romance. Tonight, explore and learn. Pisces, finally, family relationships are mutually warm and happy today. You also might see ways to make where you live more beautiful. But tonight, you must check your finances.
Okay, and moving over to the opinion column from LZ Granderson. This week, Tucker Carlson apologized for unintentionally misleading voters into supporting President Trump's return to the White House. The apology came after the president called out Carlson on social media. We've seen this before. The president's first term was shadowed by high-profile breakups from loyalists who disagreed with him on matters of substance. The split was his first defense secretary, James Mattis, began in 2017 when Mattis, a man who spent more than 4 decades in uniform, defended the importance of NATO. His successor, Mark Esper, found himself at odds with the president for refusing to use the military on citizens. Some of the highlights from Trump's second term include squabbles with his biggest donor in Elon Musk, with former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, and with Representative Thomas Massie. Now it appears it's Carlson's turn. He, like Pope Leo XIV and many other of our allies and nearly 70% of Americans, disapproves of the president's handling of the war in Iran. On a recent episode of the Carlson podcast, the former Fox News host invited his brother Buckley, a former Trump speechwriter, to discuss their buyer's remorse. Everyone has that line they won't cross for the president. For Carlson, it's Iran. Trump campaigned on ending endless wars. This week, Trump said there's no timeline for when the war he started will end. I do think it's like a moment to wrestle with our own consciences, Carlson told his brother. We'll be tormented by it for a long time. I will be, and I want to say I'm sorry for misleading people. Buckley did defend his initial support of Trump's candidacy in 2015, despite all of his obvious foibles and his disgusting elements of his personality, in part because he builds things. Buckley also said that after the election of former President Barack Obama, white Americans in Washington were subjugated by a version of Jim Crow in education and society, and that progressives would look blank or angry whenever he asked about what Obama was doing to strengthen the nation. Being red in the face over Trump did not turn the Tucker boys blue. In fact, the episode ended with the two calling the left a bunch of lunatics. Trump's ascension to the White House wasn't solely based on the contributions of media folks. The president entered 2015 having been a public figure for more than 30 years. He's had the luxury of criticizing elected officials and legislation on camera without the burden of governing for much of that time. Trump likes being quotable, not being held accountable. That's why it's doubtful he would have been elected a second time if not for the support from unscrupulous podcasters masquerading as political journalists such as Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, and Andrew Schultz, who less than a year ago said everything Trump campaigned on I believed he wanted to do, and now he's doing the exact opposite thing. I voted for none of this. As if this had not been clearly spelled out in the pages of Project 2025. Tucker Carlson's apology to listeners won't mean anything to mainstream Republicans or MAGA. Those who identify with the latter listen only to Trump. As for the former, they have always known that people like Carlson regret falling out of favor with Trump.
And Abby McCloskey says examining why MAGA takes the evangelical vote for granted. White evangelical Christians helped bring President Trump to power. They remain among his most ardent supporters as the president has gone out of his way to mock Christianity and its first commandment. 1 year in, the vast majority, 69% of white evangelicals continue to approve of Trump's job performance, according to 2026 Pew Research data. This is compared with his 39% approval rating nationally. It's true that support for Trump among all religious groups, including white evangelicals and white Catholics, has steadily dropped since he took office, but it has not collapsed. It's not just that there's nowhere else to go, it's that many Christians seem to like Trump policies. A solid majority, 58% of white evangelicals and nearly half of white Catholics, 46%, say they support all or most of his plans and policies, compared with 27% support nationally. White evangelicals are twice as likely, 40%, as the general public, 21%, to say they are confident that Trump acts ethically in his office. This, even though Trump has depicted himself as Christ in an AI-generated image, hired a spiritual advisor who compared him to the risen Christ, tweeted praise to Allah on Easter Sunday before threatening to destroy a civilization, used his 2026 National Prayer Breakfast speech to re-air his 2020 elective grievances, and continues to disparage the Pope. What are Christian groups getting in exchange for such embarrassment and harassment? Or have they so fully given their allegiance to Trump and the GOP that their priorities have become indistinguishable from his own? There is no longer much daylight between the MAGA policy agenda and the evangelical support, even on issues that would seem to be very far from the pulpit. Whereas 44% of U.S. adults support getting rid of DEI policies in the federal government, this jumps to 75% among white evangelicals, according to the 25 Pew survey. The same percentages hold for cuts to federal departments and agencies. While only 39% of U.S. adults approve substantially higher tariffs, this jumps to 69% among white evangelicals. A vast majority, 65 to 71%, support the decision to use military force in Iran. In places where the administration has bucked evangelical political priorities, the religious right has just looked away. The vast majority, 74% of white evangelical Protestants, say abortion should be illegal in all or most cases. But Trump is the first Republican president to suggest the U.S. should allow taxpayer-funded abortions, and he had long-standing anti-abortion language removed from the GOP platform prior to the 2024 election. 7 in 10 evangelicals say the U.S. has a moral responsibility to accept refugees, according to polling by Lifeway. But Trump suspended the U.S. refugee program last year, and it's now functioning at its lowest level in half a century. Trump's second term is making it obvious that we have entered a new era of church and state, even if it's not exactly clear yet what that looks like. For most of American history, Christians were not beholden to a single political party. They could function as an independent constituency and source of political accountability with priorities drawn from outside of party platforms. The rise of the religious right in the 1980s was an inflection point, with evangelicals consolidating within the GOP and making demands of political leaders in Reagan and Bush eras on everything, from school prayer to fighting communism to equal rights amendment. Today, the demands seem to work the other way around. MAGA elected officials, and particularly Trump, direct the priorities of the religious right. My sense is that in our time of deep political polarization, it has become unacceptable to draw one's political priorities from an independent source, such as religious beliefs, and not a party platform. To question the actions of one political party or to criticize its leader is seen as proclaiming loyalty to the other side. Gone is the long-held religious ideal that the church ought to be a counterweight to political power. These days, partisan blasphemy has become worse than the religious sort. For now, evangelicals are sticking by the president, but when even outright blasphemy doesn't warrant an apology, one might wonder who else is being mocked.
And Eastside Health Center is set to open this summer. A new comprehensive health care center will be opening this summer at the intersection of Bailey and Kensington Avenues, along with a full-size mural on the side of the building that was commissioned as part of the Buffalo AKG Art Museum's Public Art Initiative. Evergreen Health and its affiliate Community Access Services are constructing the 36,000 square foot facility at 3070 Bailey Avenue to bring medical and community services to an underserved neighborhood while addressing the shortage of doctors, dentists, pharmacies, and clinics in the area. The goal, officials say, is to eradicate inequities in healthcare by meeting people where they are and treating chronic conditions. The three-story building will feature primary and specialty care, as well as pharmacy services, other supportive services, and care coordination. The specialty care will focus on chronic illnesses and conditions such as HIV, hepatitis C, diabetes, obesity, and hypertension, and will also include gynecological care. Lab services will be available, and the pharmacy will be a major element, filling in a gap as Rite Aid and other pharmacies have closed. From the beginning, this project has been shaped by the voices of the community, said Ray Gano, president and CEO of Evergreen Health. This building is about more than healthcare. It's about creating a welcoming, inclusive space that reflects and serves the community. The building will include 6 to 8 examination rooms and 2 consult rooms with 21 CAS employees and a medical team of 3.5 providers and 9 support staff. It will also include behavioral health services, as well as financial counseling, a food distribution center, community mobilization, multi-use meeting room for community groups. We're proud to partner with the community to ensure our shared values and goals are reflected in the new healthcare center, said Kim Brown, executive director of CAS. CAS empowers Buffalo's communities of color through connecting to cultural roots, healthcare resources, and social services. The 2 nonprofits have also partnered with the Buffalo AKG Art Museum Public Art Initiative for a new large-scale mural that will be painted on one side of the building. Designed by local artist Bree Gilliam, a figurative painter from Buffalo who owns the Paintforia paint-throwing studio, the mural features a black woman and her daughter standing in a field of flowers, looking up toward a vibrant horizon, according to an artist's statement. My motto is art is power, and this mural has the power to inspire hope, joy, and a sense of connection for our community. A Buffalo State graduate, said Gilliam, whose work takes aim at the social issue plaguing society.
You're listening to reading of articles from the Buffalo News for today, Tuesday, April 28th, on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are Lori and
Lita.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers, in case you forgot it, are
Lori
and Lita. And Premier Place in Amherst sells for $21 million. One of the region's larger retail plazas has a new owner after it was sold for nearly $21 million this month. DLC Management Corporation of Elmsford, a national owner and operator of open-air shopping centers, sold the Premier Plaza on Transit Road in Amherst to HBM Properties, a real estate investment and management firm based in Miami, for $20.8 million. Located at 7864 to 8020 Transit, the 142,198 square foot retail center is anchored by Premier Wines and Liquors, along with Harbor Freight and Boot Barn. That was the last property that DLC owned in Western New York after buying 7 plazas locally just over a decade ago. Premier Plaza is located in a busy section of Transit Road across from a plaza anchored by Walmart, with other retailers including Lowe's, Wegmans, BJ's Wholesale Club, and Target nearby. Real estate brokerage CBRE, which represented DLC in the sale, estimates that 41,000 cars pass the Premier Place Plaza every day. Premier Place receives significant investor interest due to its central position within the market and diverse e-commerce resistant tenant mix, said Jeff Dunn, a broker of CBRE's National Retail Partners Group, which handled the transaction. DLC has more than $4 billion in assets under management in a $22.7 million square feet of space across more than 90 properties. It has acquired Premier Plaza in December of 2014 as part of a purchase of 11 shopping centers from a joint venture of Cleveland-based DDR Corporation and New York City-based Blackstone Group, including 7 in Western New York for $98.8 million. Besides Premier Plaza, those included Union Consumer Square on Union Road in Cheektowaga, Walden Consumer Square, Walden Place, and 2015 Walden Avenue on Walden and Cheektowaga, and Batavia Commons on West Main Street and the BJ's Plaza on Lewiston Road, both in Batavia. DDR, formerly Developers Diversified Realty, yikes, had acquired them in 2004 from Benderson Development Corporation as part of a much larger sale by Benderson of 52 retail plazas for $2.3 billion, but has steadily sold them off over the ensuing years, including to DLC.
And 3 depart as New Era Cap shakes up its top management. 3 high-level executives are out at New Era Cap following the purchase and integration of the 47 brand. Jim Patterson, New Era president, Steve Gallo, general manager of North America, and Josh Kreisman, vice president of global supply chain, have all departed the company. Patterson will be replaced by veteran business executive Bruce Popko, who is being elevated after serving as New Era's Senior Vice President of Global Licensing and Business Development. Popko formerly worked as an executive with the Buffalo Bills and as COO for Pagula Sports and Entertainment. Patterson has served as president of Buffalo headquartered New Era since 2022 after Chris Cook stepped aside from day-to-day leadership of the company. The company did not say why the executives departed, but taken together, the moves are a major restructuring of New Era's top management immediately under Cook at a time when the 47 acquisition is reshaping its business. The company has grown to $2 billion in annual revenue within the last year after the purchase of 47 just 2 years ago. Under the new leadership team led by Popko, New Era expects to scale its global brand, accelerate e-commerce, leverage digital capabilities, and expand its apparel platform with further investments. We thank Jim, Steve, and Josh for their contributions to New Era, and we wish them well in their next chapter, Quish Cook, CEO at New Era, said Monday in a statement. Other additions to the company's senior leadership team include longtime New Era leader Lorenz Gann, who was elevated to Chief Operating Officer after serving as Chief Digital and Information Officer. Additionally, Dave Heimberg, Vice President of Global Quality at New Era, has been appointed Vice President of Global Supply Chain, and Jennifer Lawrence, Senior Director of Informational Technology at New Era, has been elevated to Vice President of IT. With 47 now fully integrating into our global business, I look forward to strategizing with this new team and finding innovative ways to embrace our heritage and deliver for our partners, employees, customers, and investors, Cook said in a statement. Popco was influential in the process of integrating with 47, a competitor in the sport and lifestyle cap and apparel industry that New Era purchased nearly 2 years ago. New Era purchased 47, the Massachusetts-based fashion brand, with the goal of expanding and diversifying the lifestyle brand's product portfolio of headwear, apparel, and accessories. The move has enhanced licensing partnerships already in place with many of the largest global sports leagues, including the likes of Major League Baseball, National Basketball Association, National Football League, and National Hockey League, in addition to over 900 collegiate programs, NASCAR, and European and Major League Soccer clubs. It also helped push New Era sales to around the $2 billion mark.
That's
wow.
impressive.
Yeah.
And Aspire of Western New York is going to buy a church property in Cheektowaga for $815,000. A Western New York nonprofit that supports children and adults with developmental disabilities is planning to buy a church property in Cheektowaga so it can expand its services. Aspire of Western New York has an agreement in place to purchase the Maryvale Drive Presbyterian Church property at 425 Maryvale Drive for $815,000, according to documents filed in mid-April in the state Supreme Court in Erie County. The 4.79-acre property includes 16,859 square feet of building space. Because of the seller, Maryvale Drive Presbyterian Church is a religious corporation, the sale needs approval from the state attorney's general office or the state Supreme Court. The church filed a petition in court April 14th seeking an order allowing the sale to Aspire. The sale agreement was reached January 22nd. In an email statement, Aspire said its plans for the property are in early stages, but it wants to create critical community services for everyone in Western New York, with a special focus on services for children and adults with disabilities at 425 Maryvale. The property neighbors one of Aspire's program hubs at 7th Community Drive. There, Aspire offers day habilitation services, art therapy, and occupational, physical, and speech therapy, while Evergreen Health rents space in the building for a primary care clinic. In addition, the building at 7th Community Drive houses Aspire administration in the areas of community and independent living supports, residential opportunities, environment and safety, and support services such as communication, quality and compliance, workforce development, and human resources. The Maryvale Drive property is an opportunity for Aspire to expand programming that supports the individual needs of the people we support and brings the great Western New York community a vital resource in human services and community collaboration, the agency said. While our plans are not yet finalized, we look forward to releasing more information soon on how we hope to transform the property and, along with our neighboring property, create an interwoven hub based on accessibility, inclusion, and independence, Aspire said. Aspire said it doesn't have an expected timeline for when the state will approve the sale. The Presbytery of Western New York, the governing authority over the church in Western New York belonging to the Presbyterian Church denomination, did not respond to an email seeking comment. The Presbytery of Western New York and the session of the church both approved resolution approving the sale of the property. In 2025, Maryvale Drive Presbyterian Church's expenses of about $63,000 exceeded its revenue by around $9,000, according to financial statements filed in court. Maryvale Drive Presbyterian Church was incorporated in 1948, according to records filed. Over the years, the church has appeared in the news occasionally. In the mid-90s, the church held a memorial service for those affected by the fatal Cleveland Hill school fire in 1954, honoring the memory of the 15 students who died in the fire and the courage of those who survived. In 2001, its then pastor, Reverend Philip Seidens, became the first Presbyterian minister in the United States to formally go on record in favor of ordaining the ordination of gays and lesbians as ministers. And in 2005, the church was a gathering spot for neighbors to discuss concerns over a developer's proposal to buy and demolish existing homes in Cheektowaga and replace them with a community of townhouses. Aspire of Western New York, based in Gettsville, recorded net incomes of $4.5 million on revenues of $95.2 million in 24, according to the nonprofit's most recent Form 990 filed with the IRS. In 23, Aspire reported net incomes of $2.3 million on revenues of $84.5 million. Aspire offers a range of programs, services, and supports, including day services, community and independent living support, educational services, adult therapy services, residential opportunities, and respite and recreation programs.
And don't expect airfare prices to drop after fuel costs dip. The soaring cost of jet fuel due to the war in Iran will lead to significantly higher airfares, but don't expect ticket prices to drop once the fuel prices start to decline. Higher fares are being driven by strong demand for travel as much as the cost of fuel. Despite higher ticket prices, travelers are booking tickets in record numbers at many airlines, so as long as passengers keep flying, higher fares are likely to stay in place, no matter the cost of fuel. The longer consumers pay these prices, and airlines get used to this revenue stream, the more likely it is to hold, United CEO Scott Kirby said during its earnings call Wednesday. The airline passengers are now paying an average of 20% more for every mile they fly compared with last year. When asked about keeping higher fares when fuel prices normalize, American Airlines CEO Robert Isom said customers have already been willing to pay more for things like extra legroom or seats closer to the front. I'm bullish on what that means for our business, Isom told analysts on Thursday. He said that summer bookings have stayed strong even as the airlines have raised their fares. The price of jet fuel, which has roughly doubled since the start of the year, is a major factor behind the widespread fare increases. Fuel is the second largest operating cost for airlines, and that's behind only labor. The nation's four largest carriers, which are United, America, Delta, and Southwest, spent on average a combined $100 million a day on fuel last year, and that was during a time of relatively cheap oil and fuel costs. Today, they're paying billions more. Delta said it faced $2 billion increase in fuel costs in the current quarter just alone. Airlines are passing some of the cost to consumers. Recent results show they're already charging passengers 20% more for every mile they fly compared with a year ago, and fares are projected to go still higher. Southwest Airlines Chief Operating Officer Andrew Watterson told investors Thursday there have already been 5 industry-wide fare hikes so far this year, and there's more on the way. And all the airlines say they've only recovered a portion of their increased costs. But fares are not based on the cost of operating a flight, said Zach Griff, author of an airline newsletter, from the Tray Table. Instead, price is primarily determined by demand for a certain route, a time of day or a week, and the amount of competition. For example, midweek or overnight red-eye flights are typically cheaper than prime travel times on the same route, such as on Friday afternoon. And passengers often pay far less for every mile traveled on popular long-haul flights between major cities, such as New York and Los Angeles, than on shorter routes that have less demand. Airlines are cutting some of these less profitable flights, which have become money losers amid higher fuel prices. Removing bargain fares is also lifting the average ticket price. But with travelers still booking tickets, airlines know they can make higher fares stick on their remaining flights. And in Business Briefly, M&T Bank is to close its branch in Perry, which was open since 1967. M&T Bank this summer will close a branch in Wyoming County that opened in 1967. The branch, 43 South Main Street in Perry, will close on July 23rd.
And we're going to move over to a little sports, but first let me tell you that you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service, and the time is 14 minutes past the hour. And Buffalo Sabres are in their comfort zone, and they managed to ace the road test. The full-throttle Buffalo Sabres are back. No more dipping the toes in the playoff waters. And you absolutely can win in the postseason with the kind of hockey we've seen since December. The Sabres have been the NHL's best team for the last 4.5 months, and they sure looked the part again in these 2 playoff games in Boston. Puck pressure from relentless forechecking, defensemen coming up into the play, finishing at the net, everyone moving his feet, anticipation where the puck is going, selling out for blocks, goaltending. You know those components. You've seen them for months. They all came together Sunday in a 6-1 bashing of the Boston Bruins that pushed the good folks in the hub one more Buffalo win away from being in all Celtics all the time mode. For domination on the road, the quickest comparison you could find in Sabre history was their 7-1 punking of the Philadelphia in 2006 when the Flyers were at home looking for a chance to force Game 7. The Sabres were never threatened in that game as Chris Drury and Mike Greer each had 4-point nights. On Sunday, in taking in a 3-1 first-round series lead, they went ahead 4-0 after the first 20 minutes of Game 4 in what could rate as the best first period they've ever played on the road in the postseason. Buffalo outshot the Bruins 19-5 and dominated them in shots attempts 34-13. Boston played hot potato with the puck, committing 10 giveaways, and Bruin fans pounded their team with richly deserved boos. It sounded a lot like KeyBank Center over the last 10 years. For once, it was a great sound to hear. I thought tonight that first period was the best period we've played all year, Coach Lindy Ruff said. Puck pressure, scoring opportunities as well as we moved the puck, got the puck up the ice, and didn't spend much time in our end. In the rare instances when the Bruins actually had the puck, goaltender Alex Lyon stood tall. He had a 0.89 goals against average and a .964 save percentage in his 3 appearances in this series. It's his crease for now. Lyon loved the maturity the Sabres showed in the second period. With a 4-0 lead, they just took the air out of the puck in the mid-20s while dealing with their long change. The Bruins had just 6 high-danger scoring chances the entire game. Lyon became the 5th Sabre goaltender to earn wins in each of his first 2 career playoff starts with the franchise, and only Grant Fuhrer in the 1993 May Day series with Boston had previously done that on the road. You could feel they pushed hard in the second period, and sometimes it's not always about trying to outpush them, Lyon said. Sometimes it's about accepting the push. We did a good job of that. You're not going to be on your toes for 60 minutes. It's just an unrealistic task. I thought we did a great job of keeping them to the outside. The Bruins came close to leaving Buffalo with a 2-0 lead in the series. To see them utterly discombobulated through most of Game 4 was hard to believe. Atrocious Boston puck management led directly to giveaways that produced 3 Buffalo goals. It felt like way more than 10 giveaways. David Pastrnak and Morgan Geekie were invisible, and Charlie McAvoy's puck troubles made him far too visible. According to the NHL's stat department, it was the first time the Bruins had ever fallen into a 4-0 first-period deficit in a playoff game, and this was postseason contest number 706 in their history. Getting the 1-0 lead on Peyton Krebs' goal was massive. We wanted to make sure we took it to them right off the top, not on our heels, getting on our toes right away, Krebs said. I was just trying to reload and get back. Tommy, Tage Thompson, broke the play up in the middle. Tucky made a great pass, and I just put it in the net. It was a good play. Added defenseman Owen Power. That's huge, especially against a team that kind of clogs up the neutral zone. It was nice to score 4 in the first and make them open up pretty much. The Sabres became the first NHL team to score 9 consecutive road goals within a single playoff series. Vegas did it at Minnesota in 2021, and the Buffalo streak was snapped only by Sean Curley's garbage time goal with 40 seconds left. It has been a wild turnaround to this series. The Sabres led for just 3 minutes and 24 seconds in the 2 games in Buffalo. The Bruins led for just 7 minutes and 32 seconds of the 2 games here. Meanwhile, Boston's lead time in KeyBank Center was a startling 99 minutes and 57 seconds, while Buffalo was in front for 71 minutes and 41 seconds in Boston. The Bruins had plenty of discord on the wake of this one. Jeremy Swayman chirped his entire bench on his way off the ice after he got yanked 6 minutes into the third period after the Buffalo's 6th goal. Coach Marco Sturm accurately called it embarrassing. McAvoy, a tidy -4 next to his name, dropped an F-bomb to emphasize his embarrassment. There were plenty of "Let's Go Buffalo" chants in the building and a clear mocking chant of Swayman at one point. Heard almost nothing of Bruin fans in Buffalo, and plenty of Sabre fans appeared to come here, especially for the Sunday matinee, with tickets far more available and cheaper than what they are at KeyBank Center. Our fans have been great, Russ said. I can't say enough about how well traveled they were in the last half of the year, and now in a playoff building. And now the Buffalo fans are a win away. Take it to the Bruins again Tuesday, and they'll see a series-clinching victory for the first time in 19 years. Another drought might bite the dust.
Go Sabres.
Go
Gotta bite the
Sabres.
dust. And the Bulls are heading for a rematch with Ohio State. The University at Buffalo men's tennis team waited 17 minutes of the NCAA selection show Monday night to find out their opponent in next month's NCAA Division I men's tennis tournament at Broadview Stadium. Once again, UB coach Lee Nickel and his Bulls will visit number 3 Ohio State, 29-4, in the first round of the NCAAs, which begins May 15th at the University of Georgia's McGill Tennis Complex in Athens, Georgia. In 2025, UB lost to number 5 Ohio State 4-0 in the first round of nationals. This team it consisted of 4 guys from last year's team, but with 4 newcomers, it felt like new, said Nickel, who earned his second Mid-American Conference Coach of the Year award while guiding Buffalo to a 5th NCAA tennis tournament. But to come back to do it again, I told the guys, as this season started, this was going to be the toughest task that we've ever faced, much tougher than last year. And man, these guys just stepped up. They did a great job. Buffalo, 16-6 and 8-2, has won the MAC regular season and tournament titles 2 consecutive years, sharing the regular season crown with Western Michigan this spring. UB won its second straight MAC tournament title April 19th with a 4-0 victory over Northern Illinois. Senior Theodoros Mitsakos earned his third All-MAC honor by making the first team with junior Onur Balki from Shalandri, Greece. Mitsakos has spent all 4 years at UB. He saw the team's focus shift as a sophomore when the program began bringing in new players. Everyone wanted to beat us, Mitsakos said. They played their best all the matches, but we saw how strong we are and how mentally strong we are. We did it again. Graduate student Clement Main Guy, most outstanding player of the MAC tournament, and junior Min Jae Kim garnered all MAC second team honors. Main Guy is a native of Port Vila, Vanuatu, who was the Horizon League Freshman of the Year in 22 before transferring to Buffalo in 24-25. We came in with a fresh mindset, Main Guy said. These guys, they came up with rough years. So we came in, we've tried to bring in positive energy every day. Last year we had no pressure. This year, the target was on our back, and we were able to pull it off again. In UB women's tennis, the women's tennis team, coached by Kristen Maines, fell 4-1 in Toledo in the MAC tournament semifinals Saturday at the Miami Tennis Courts in Oxford, Ohio. Victories by double teams Sarah Hartel and Julia Laspro and Blanca Berge and Liv Rostel earned Buffalo its lone point. Graduate student Esme Anderson made the All-MAC first team for the second time after recording 21 wins in singles and 21 more wins as a doubles duo with Maria Glawaka, a sophomore who earned All-MAC second team honors after winning 23 singles matches. UB ended the season 19-7 overall and finished second in the MAC at 8-2.
And over to the PGA, Goosen wins the PGA Champions event. Redif Goosen recorded a bogey-free back 9 and birdied the 18th hole in Sunday's final round to win the Mitsubishi Electric Classic by 2 points at plus 39, minus 39 in Sugarloaf, Georgia. The PGA Champions Tour tournament used the modified Stableford scoring system to encourage aggressive play. Rather than scoring relative to par, points are awarded per hole. -1 for a bogey, 0 for a par, and 2 for birdie. Eagles are worth 5 points, while double bogeys are -3. That's confusing. Goosen entered the third round 3 points back of Zach Johnson at plus 25, having scored plus 12 on Friday and plus 13 on Saturday. The South African made 5 birdies in a 6-hole span between numbers 2 and 7 to surge ahead. I got into a great rhythm all week. I drove it really well in the first round, yesterday pretty poor, and today was a little better, Goosen said. The putter this week got me going, and that's how you win tournaments. After a bogey on the par 4, 9th, he posted 6 pars along with birdies on the 10th, 13th, and 18th holes. The last birdie broke a deadlock with Canada's Stephen Ames, a plus 37, preventing a playoff and handing the 2-time major champion his 5th Champions Tour title. A special moment was made that much more memorable by the fact that Goosen's son was there in person to watch him finish atop the leaderboard. I think the biggest emotion is that I've won in front of my son. Him actually seeing me win, not seeing me on TV win, Goosen said. It was nice to pull it off in front of him. Last time I won in front of him, he was 1 year old in 2004's U.S. Open, so a really proud moment to have him here and see me lifting a trophy. Ames, plus 19 on Sunday, was tied with 2 others for the best score of the tournament in Sunday's round, nearly rallying all the way back from a plus 2 opening round that had him well down the leaderboard. He carded 1 eagle, 7 birdies, and no bogeys. Johnson, who had plus 8, hit 2 birdies and 2 bogeys in the first 6 holes before rattling off 9 straight pars to halt what had been a consistent week of putting of positive numbers. He birdied the final 3 holes, finishing a stroke back of Ames in 3rd place at plus 36. Stuart Sink, plus 19, and Thailand's Thung Jdi was plus 15, rounded out the top 5 at plus 35 and plus 33. Sink, who scored a combined plus 30 in the first and third rounds, was derailed by a plus 5 on Saturday. Sunday was a little bit more, a little bit more purposeful mindset, Sink said. And I don't know why I felt more freed up, but I felt more freed up to just go out there and just throw it all against the wall and see what happens. Got off to a great start, made eagle on 6. It's amazing how quickly you can get back into this thing in this format. It's really interesting and fun. Royal Lytham and St. Anne's are going to be hosting the 2028 Open.
Oh.
The 2028 Open Championship was awarded to England's Royal Lytham and St. Anne's Golf Club on Monday. The official announcement from the R&A means Scotland's Trump Turnberry must wait until at least 2029 to host the Open. Turnberry is still in our thinking, R&A CEO Mark Darbin said Monday at Royal Birkdale Golf Club during media days for this year's Open Championship in July. Turnberry last hosted the Open in 2009, 5 years before the Trump Organization, parent company of U.S. President Donald Trump's real estate portfolio, purchased the property for $60 million. Turnberry, which also hosted the major championship in 77, 86, and 94, has undergone a reported $200 million in renovations and upgrades since joining the Trump umbrella, according to Front Office Sports. Trump's son, Donald Jr., and Eric have been in charge of the day-to-day operations of the Trump Organization since 2017. Attendance at the 2009 Open at Turnberry was an estimated 123,000 fans, far below the 200,000 plus common at many of the other venues in rotation. We really like the golf course, Darbin said Monday. We know that there are some logistical challenges that relate to staging a modern Open Championship there, primarily off the course road, rail, and accommodation infrastructure. We've got a really good dialogue with the club and its ownership, pretty transparent discussion there. Stuart Sink defeated 59-year-old Tom Watson in a 4-hole playoff to win the Open in Turnberry in 2009. Royal Lytham and St. Anne's has hosted the Open Championship 11 times since 1926, most recently in 2012 when South Africa's Ernie Els defeated Adam Scott by 1 stroke.
And you're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 29 minutes after the hour. And in some sports notes, Coleman, ex-linebacker with Washington, dies at 68. Monty Coleman, who won 3 Super Bowls while playing linebacker his entire NFL career for the Washington franchise, died on Sunday at age 68. A cause of death was not given in announcements by the Washington Commanders, as well as by Arkansas Pine Bluff, where Coleman was head coach at his hometown university from 2008 to 17 and was 40-71. The Golden Lions won the Southwestern Athletic Conference title back in 2012, as well as the Box to Row HBCU Division I Coaches National Championship. Coach Coleman represented everything we strive for at UAPB: excellence, integrity, and a relentless commitment to developing our student athletes, UAPB Athletic Director Chris Robinson said in a statement. His legacy is not only written in championships and honors, but in the lives he changed every single day. The first player drafted from Central Arkansas, Coleman went to Washington in the 11th round of the 1979 NFL Draft, which was 12 rounds at that time. He played 16 seasons, all for Washington, and totaled 1,002 tackles, 999 solo, 49 and a half sacks, 17 interceptions, 3 returned for touchdowns, 13 forced fumbles, and 14 fumble recoveries in the 215 regular season games, 62 starts from 1979 to 1994. Coleman also played in 21 playoff games. He started 5 of them and recorded 5 tackles, 4.5 sacks, and 2 interceptions. Washington won Super Bowl championships in 82, 87, 91, and played in the 1983 game. Monty Coleman was one of the greatest players in Washington history, Commanders owner Josh Harris said in his statement. He was one of the pillars of our championship defenses, having played for all 3 Super Bowl winning teams. His durability and leadership set the standard for what it meant to suit up for the burgundy and gold. Coleman ranks second in franchise history in total games played and solo tackles, and 6th in sacks. He was inducted into the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame in 1998 and Washington's Ring of Fame in 2015. That was one of the greatest accolades I've ever received, Coleman said of his Washington honor. To be listed among those players, I will always cherish that. That means a whole lot to me. Vanderbilt star quarterback Diego Pavia has accepted an invitation to the Baltimore Ravens rookie minicamp next weekend, and this was reported by ESPN on Sunday. The Ravens need signal callers for the rookie camp, as they don't have any on their roster that qualify and didn't select any in the just concluded draft. Baltimore also is reportedly bringing in UConn quarterback Joe Fagnano for the camp. Baltimore has veteran quarterbacks Lamar Jackson and Tyler Huntley on its active roster. Pavia went undrafted in the 3-day 7-round draft despite being runner-up for the Heisman Trophy. He is the first runner-up for the prestigious award to go undrafted since Iowa quarterback Brad Banks back in 2003. Pavia also became the first Heisman finalist since quarterback Jordan Lynch of Northern Illinois in 2014 to be passed over in the draft. Pavia passed for 10,255 yards, 88 touchdowns, and 27 interceptions while starting at New Mexico State, that was in 22 and 23, and in Vanderbilt at 24 and 25. Last season, he completed 70.6% of his passes for 3,539 yards, 29 touchdowns against 8 interceptions. And around the league, 9-year veteran offensive tackle Donovan Smith announced his retirement from football on Sunday. Smith played 136 games in his NFL career. He was a second-round pick by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the 2015 NFL Draft. He was immediately plugged into the starting lineup and was a PFWA All-Rookie selection. He played 8 seasons for the Buccaneers. Most notably, he was a starter on the team that won Super Bowl 55. The New Orleans Saints agreed to a contract with outside linebacker Anfernee Jennings. Multiple media outlets reported on Sunday, but the terms of the deal were not announced.
And let's go over to Asking Eric. Dear Eric, I am part of a group of friends from church. We have known each other for more than 40 years. There is one member who has done very well in business, and we are all doing fine financially. The group contains multiple doctors and lawyers. This man, however, cannot stop bragging about the money and privileges he has acquired. He must workshop segues on how to inject his latest win into every conversation. It's uncanny how he can worm his success into any topic. My question is how to politely tell this man to stop. We all know he's rich and powerful, and we don't care. Signed, Unimpressed and Bored. Dear Unimpressed, one option is to say to him, I've noticed you have this pattern. It's coming across as bragging and making it hard to feel connected. Have you noticed that? But the caveat here is that if he's been doing this for 40 years, or even the better part of 40 years, it's unlikely that he'll be inclined to stop. This might be just who he is, whether he's speaking from pride or insecurity or some other emotion. Do you like spending time with him otherwise? Is there a way of engaging with him otherwise at all? Or is it all bragging? And these are helpful considerations when thinking through what you want from this conversation and what's reasonable to expect. Directness is helpful and polite, but be prepared for him to turn the conversation back around to his riches if he doesn't like what he's hearing. Dear Eric, my husband passed away last October. He was very close with his cousin even though they lived states away. Their birthdays are 2 days apart. The cousin and his wife were notified about his death. I didn't get any kind of acknowledgement via phone or card. I'm disappointed. Am I wrong to feel this way? Signed, Unacknowledged. Dear Unacknowledged, I'm sorry for the loss of your husband. It's not a matter of whether you're wrong to feel the way you do. The feelings are facts. So what do you do about them? Reach out to your husband's cousin and tell him how you feel and what you wish had happened. Ask him for his perspective. A conversation can't undo the past, but it will help alleviate some of the disappointment you're feeling. This is important because disappointment or resentment will get in the way of the other healing that you're doing. Better to speak your mind and get his side than to stew alone about it. Dear Eric, this letter is in reference to No Thanks, who sent a sympathy package to a friend but didn't receive a thank you. My husband passed away a month ago and my multitasking muscle is gone. It is typical for bereaved people to lose their train of thought, for example. Executive function can be AWOL for a while, and that is me. I have bursitis in the first joint of the index finger on my dominant hand. I am metering out my thank you notes one a day because my handwriting deteriorates the more I write, and I didn't start writing them right away. I was quite undone by my husband's unexpected passing. No Thanks did the right thing to send that food. What a thoughtful gesture. Signed, Still There. Dear Still There, I'm so sorry for the loss of your husband. Please give yourself all the time you need to get to those thank you notes and other tasks. That's not the priority. Know that those who love you care less about a thank you than they do about you and making sure that you get what you need to navigate your grief. Dear Eric, in addition to your fine response to Hurting, Confused, and Flowerless, who went through tough times that weren't acknowledged by her close friends, I'd like to add my perspective. If you are a strong woman who doesn't complain or seem needy, people think that you don't need any support. You are Wonder Woman. I have had this experience in my life many times. The reward for being strong is to keep being strong. So I have learned to ask for what I need or want. For me, it doesn't make the help any less valuable. Hope this helps your letter writer. Signed, Asked and Answered. Dear Asked, thank you so much for writing. You're absolutely right. Asking for what you need doesn't make the help less valued. It is a sad truth that strength is often seen as an island, and people who are outwardly strong or stoic in some areas sometimes have to be more proactive about telling friends and loved ones how to best show up for them. It requires vulnerability too, which can be hard for folks, but it's so important.
It surely is. And our national parks brace for a surge with more cuts-eyed. When families flocked to Yosemite National Park during their recent spring breaks, some met 2-hour waits at the entrance gates. At a lakeside spot in the North Cascades in Washington state, there hasn't been enough staff to open the visitor center. And in Death Valley, water was shut off at 2 campgrounds. National Parks staffs and advocates fear that such issues could only worsen this summer as the park system faces the busy season with a dramatically reduced staff. At Yosemite, concerns are compounded by the National Park Service's recent elimination of the park's timed entry reservation system, which led to the long spring break lines. We're definitely really nervous and anxious about the upcoming season, especially with the staff shortage we already have, said the National Federation of Federal Employees Union member at Yosemite, who requested anonymity to speak candidly. The National Park Service has lost nearly a quarter of its staff to buyouts, early retirements, and other departures since the Trump administration took office last year, according to an estimate by the National Parks Conservation Association. This month, the administration proposed cutting nearly 3,000 more positions in its 27 budget. It also offered a recent new round of buyouts. The push to cut the park system even further, ahead not only of peak season, but of America's 250th birthday, which the Trump administration has promoted in relation to national parks, has underscored ongoing questions about how smoothly parks can operate as warm weather and summer vacations draw tourists. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum defended the budget proposal on Capitol Hill last week, telling senators that the visitor experience to parks can be improved even while spending and staff reductions are made. He said the agency plans to hire 5,500 seasonal workers and asked Congress to approve funding for those employees to work for 9-month stints rather than 6-month stints. All of that's going to help us get this thing in shape, even with an overall reduction, Burgum said on Wednesday. He was met with skepticism by Democrats who confronted him over the spending proposal. This is just a recipe for disaster, said Senator Patty Murray from Washington. Congress will have the final say on the proposed cuts, but in the meantime, the reductions that have already occurred presented challenges last season and appear likely to do so again, said Cheryl Schreier, a retired superintendent of Mount Rushmore National Memorial and chair of the Coalition to Protect America's National Parks. Whether the parks will get enough qualified candidates to hire the number of seasonal workers needed is also a really big concern, she said. It's really important to have all of those individuals to be able to operate a park in a good fashion. The lower staffing has prompted worry about parks' capacity for emergency response, protection of the national landscape, and custodial maintenance. Fewer rangers could mean, for instance, fewer people to reach dehydrated, stranded, or lost hikers, said Chance Wilcox, California Desert Director for the National Parks Conservation Association. A Park Service spokesperson said Friday that staffing decisions are made based on local conditions at each park and that the agency is focusing on ensuring parks remain open, accessible, and safe for visitors. About 323 million people visit America's national parks annually, according to the Interior Department. While the parks can expect heavy traffic, a drop in international tourism and the rise in gas prices has injected additional uncertainty into the tourism industry this year. The number of Canadians visiting the United States has dropped since Trump took office, according to the Canadian government, with the number of Canadians making car trips to the United States this March declining by 35% compared to March of 2024.
That's a lot.
The Interior Department also instituted a new $100 per person fee for non-Americans entering 11 of the most popular parks, a move to raise money for the parks, but an extra squeeze for Canadians and other international visitors. Let's be unwelcoming.
Right.
At the Senate and House hearings on the interior budget, Burgum presented a vision of the national park system as one where most employees should be working at a park and interacting with visitors, and said he was more focused on filling those roles than jobs that are in the regional offices. Our goal is to have more people actually working in the parks, he told the senators. A spokesperson said the agency was advancing high priority improvements across the system, including visitor-facing services, public safety, maintenance, and projects that improve the experience for the American people. an Interior Department spokesperson said in a statement on Friday. Critics say that strategy displays a misunderstanding of how the 109-year-old agency functions. Employees who work on contracts, human resources, IT, communications, and other organizational and administrative jobs are essential to keeping the parks running, Wilcox said. If everything were visitor or front-facing, the entire agency would collapse from behind, said Wilcox of the National Parks Conservation Association. The decision to discontinue the reservation system at Yosemite, as well as at Arches and Glacier National Parks, is another part of Interior's mission to bring more people into the parks. The concept was designed to expand public access this summer, the Park Service said in announcing the policy in February. It kept the time entry system in Rocky Mountain National Park for the peak season. In addition to causing long lines, cramming too many people into the parks at once could lead to environmental damage, particularly if people park cars in natural areas, said Don Neubacher, a retired Yosemite superintendent and a member of the Coalition to Protect America's National Parks. It's going to be mass chaos, he said. On a Saturday at the end of March, John Christensen of Coarse Gold, California, drove to the park with his 38-year-old son. They were surprised to encounter a 2-hour wait to get into the park, plus at least a half-hour hunt for parking after they made it through the gates, he said. It was almost like Disneyland. It was really uncomfortable from the standpoint of just so many people, said Christensen, age 82. It's kind of troubling to see that they've opened up the floodgates, and now it's kind of ruining the experience for everybody.
Yes, I think it is. And a spate of congressional scandals lead to a scramble seeking changes. In the span of 10 days, the nation's capital saw a cascade of ethical scandals that cut across party lines and branches of government, raising fresh doubts about whether Washington is capable of holding itself accountable. 3 members of Congress, 2 Democrats and a Republican, resigned within days of one another as they faced calls for their expulsion due to their alleged misconduct. A 4th lawmaker is facing the same pressure, but has so far refused to step down. A cabinet secretary stepped down amid a months-long investigation into allegations that she pursued a romantic relationship with a member of her security detail, while her husband stood accused of sexually assaulting female staffers in her agency. In a separate case, the Department of Homeland Security confirmed last week that it put a senior counterterrorism official on administrative leave as it investigates an ex-boyfriend's allegations that she was seeking out wealthy men online to pay for luxury items. All that has reignited a debate about whether Washington's rules and institutions for self-oversight can keep pace with the misconduct unfolding within it. Clearly, we have an ethical problem, said Representative. They just figured this out. The top Democrat on the House Ethics Committee, DeSalegnier, who had served on the committee since 2023, said the panel is long overdue for an overhaul. He would like to see the committee speed up investigations and give it more authority to root out misconduct before lawmakers can resign or avoid accountability. It takes too long, he said, drawing an analogy to law enforcement standards for officers facing misconduct allegations. If you're a law enforcement officer, there are standards for a suspension with pay or without pay. I think we need to take a look at things like that. The committee's record shows that since 1976, it has investigated 28 instances in which a House member was suspected of sexual misconduct. The outcome in 13 of those cases was a loss of jurisdiction, meaning the member resigned, retired, or otherwise left the House before the committee could reach a conclusion on the allegations. The 2 most recent cases in which the committee lost jurisdiction were the investigations into former California Representative Eric Swalwell, a Democrat accused of sexual assault who denied the allegations, and Republican former Texas Representative Tony Gonzalez, who last month admitted to a sexual relationship with a staffer who later died by suicide. The committee is investigating Representative Corey Mills, a Florida Republican, on allegations of sexual misconduct and/or dating violence. Mills has denied wrongdoing and declined to step down, telling CNN that House Speaker Mike Johnson told him not to resign and let the process play out. Johnson has defended his stance on ensuring there is due process for House members, telling reporters last week that representatives should not be removed based only on allegations. There's got to be an element of due process, he said at a news conference, in which he also acknowledged that sometimes it takes a long time to achieve that and that he is open to suggestions on how to make the process better. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries from New York has also expressed hesitance in ousting members before they receive due process. He said that much in relation to Representative Sheila Sherfilis McCormick from Florida, who resigned as she faced an ethics investigation and federal criminal charges of stealing $5 million in disaster relief funds. She had pleaded not guilty to the charges. The stance has drawn objections from 14 House Democrats in competitive swing districts, including California Representative Mike Levin and Derek Tran. In a letter addressed to Johnson and Jeffries, the lawmakers urged both House leaders to push the Ethics Committee to expedite their investigation with more transparency, including public hearings. The calls for reform are not limited to the House. Senator Adam Schiff said Congress as a whole needs to increase transparency around how ethics complaints are handled and create a system that better protects junior staffers rather than members and senior aides who oversee them. The House of Representatives has an office that provides legal advice and representation to staff, but the Senate doesn't appear to have such a thing, Schiff said. So that is also something I'm looking into. Schiff is also pushing to install an inspector general inside the executive office of the president, a watchdog position that has never existed there despite being standard across the rest of the federal government. The White House declined to comment on the allegations against former Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemer, who stepped down last week after multiple allegations of abusing her position's power, including having an affair with a subordinate and drinking alcohol on the job. The New York Times reported that Chavez DeRemer was under investigation by the agency's inspector general and that an imminent report was likely to be unfavorable toward her. The investigation had been ongoing for several months before her departure. In a separate case, the Department of Homeland Security confirmed that the Los Angeles Times, or to the Times, that Julia Varvaro, the agency's Deputy Assistant Secretary, was put on administrative leave amid an investigation into allegations that she was seeking out sugar daddies online. The scandals come as recent polling shows Americans are growing more dissatisfied with Trump in Congress. Congress's approval rating has plummeted to 10%, according to Gallup polling released last week. Public approval of Trump has dropped to 28%, according to a Marquette University Law School poll released earlier this month. The president's approval ratings are tightly linked to concerns about the Iran war and the economy. Some lawmakers, like DeSaulnier, worry that the scandals will continue to erode America's confidence in the government and the people who represent them. If they don't have trust in these institutions and the people who are in these positions, that's a real serious problem for American democracy.
I think we need something a little lighter here.
Okay,
so it happens to be Anne Margaret's 85th birthday, so you can catch a classic on TCM beginning at 8 p.m. You can't think about Anne Margaret without thinking of those wild hip twists and the energetic hair flips, the red hair. As today marks her 85th birthday, TCM celebrates the Swedish-born icon by showing a marathon of her films. The night begins with 1963's Bye Bye Birdie, where her music talents, she started singing when she was 6, and uninhibited charisma not only made her a breakout star, but also turned her into one of the most vibrant stars of the 1960s. In the next film, The Cincinnati Kid, which was 1965, the actress set the tone with her cool sensuality opposite Steve McQueen within the poker world. Anne Margaret then grounds the crime drama Once a Thief, 1965, as the wife of an ex-con trying to lead a normal life who is caught at the moral crossroads of loyalty and survival. Finishing off the birthday marathon is a late-night airing of the romantic comedy Made in Paris, and that was from 1966.
Okay, and on this day in history, Maryland ratified the United States Constitution in 1788, becoming the seventh state to do so. In 1869, Chinese and Irish laborers of the Central Pacific Railroad set a record as they laid 10 miles of track in one day near Promontory, Utah. In 1945, Italian resistance member Walter Audisio executed dictator Benito Mussolini. The Italian fascist and his mistress, Claretta Petacci, were executed in the village of Giulino di Mezzagra in northern Italy. Pardon my Italian. The next day, their bodies were brought to Milan's Piazzale Loreto for public display. In 1947, the Kon-Tiki set out on a 101-day journey across the Pacific to the Polynesian island from Peru. Thor Heyerdahl and 5 other crew members boarded a balsa wood raft on their perilous journey.
You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News. For today, Tuesday, April the 28th, we read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m., rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been Lori and
Lita.
Thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio Reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555. And thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.